And I'm just super interested because it's like, take me through that a little bit. So you saw that in the future we're all going to need to be working remotely, or we're going to be working a lot more remotely. And then what were some of the things that you started to do? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that have ideas of how they see the future or what they believe is going to happen and where the shifts are going to be, but they're not really sure how to jump into that world or what it takes to have the courage to do that. And so I wonder if
Mm.
you could expand on that just a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely lead a lot with intuition and knowing, and I've learned over the years to trust that intuitive force without necessarily having to have all the answers. And that has taken me time as a leader to get to that place. It's taken me time as an entrepreneur to get to that place. One way I like to look at entrepreneurship is that when I decided to become an entrepreneur, it wasn't any one particular business. It was a way of life and a way of being. So, with that kind of lens, I'm more comfortable with the fact that things don't always work out. And I mean, a very normal, everyday part of being an entrepreneur is failure. And that's one word for it, but I, prefer, as we've all heard it reframed as challenge and all of that kind of thing and problem solving. And it really is like every single day, that's our job, is to just be solving problems. But to come back to your question, so I think when I can tap into my intuition and trust that I don't need to have all of the answers about how things are going to be, but I have this knowing and this sense that this will be the future, or this is a problem worth solving, that's when I'll dive into it. So Grow My Team was born in 2014, and I had a millennial financial planning company in Australia, and it was getting really hard for me to scale because I was trying to manage the office space and all of the logistics of that with the cost of like high wages in Australia. My company was Australian. It's a very expensive place to engage team members. And I was just struggling. I was like stuck. And for 4 years, we had been stuck at this same like revenue and losing money, and we just couldn't move the needle. And then I just, I think I was speaking to a friend who had a person who was working for them in another country and it was cheaper. And I was like, that's a good idea. And so I hired my first team member, which I just found on Upwork, who was a financial controller. And it was so much better than I could have imagined. She blew my mind. It was beyond my wildest like conception of how good it could be. I also really loved bringing another culture, another insights, another opinion into our team. And I got really excited. And so I decided in that moment that rather than just me going out and trying to find more people, that I would start a company to help other entrepreneurs who are in my position. I was like, the world needs this, so we just got to do it. So, and I need it. So I was forming a company around the problem I needed to be solved, and then that I could, so I could use my own company and then offer that service to other people as well. But I just, I had three business partners at the beginning, and over the last 5 years, I've brought them all out. And they were just not as passionate about it as me. It didn't take off as quickly as they wanted. They lost interest. And the whole time I was just like, no, I'm not ready to let it go. We discussed trying to sell it at one point. We discussed closing it down. And all the time, all the years, it was a side business for me. And I was like, no, one day I'm going to be able to get stuck into this. And I know that, and I just trusted, like, I have to hang on to this. And when the time is right, I will be there and we will be ready to go. And it was January last year. So I've been CEO full time for a year and 3 months. It was January last year that I took over full time as CEO, bought out my last business partner, and I've been spent all of last year kind of rebuilding the foundation, rebuilding my team, getting ready to scale. I had no idea that this would be the thing. Like, that is not that. This is where I say, like, I had the intuitive knowing based on the fact that we have the internet, we have freedom and flexibility now, millennials especially. I'm a millennial, and that's quickly becoming the largest part of the workforce. We love to travel. We value that freedom and flexibility. I just intuitively knew that remote working was the thing of the future, and I knew that there's a hurdle to overcome. That there's still a lot of fear and question marks around, like, how do I know that my team will perform? How do I create culture, all of those things, which I knew are actually far easier than you would imagine once you dive in. But I knew we have to get there. Lo and behold, a
Here you
random
are.
virus hits the world and everybody now has to work remotely and gets to understand that it's really not difficult to create culture. It's not difficult to see, to engage your team, to see who's performing and who's not. It's actually easier sometimes when you're doing it remotely. So yeah, who knew that this would be the thing?
Who
But
knew?
I just had an intuition that we would get there eventually. And yeah.
I think we could probably speak for about 5 hours on intuition, because I know that
Yeah.
with myself, when I closed up shop in Australia after my degree and just said, I got this feeling that I need to join the military and I need to make a massive change. It was, no one could understand it. And it's very, it's weird to go and speak to people and for everyone just to not be sure why you're doing it. Like, where does this idea even come from? But you explain it as intuition, and, I'm sure that we could deconstruct that for a long, long time, but there's a lot of power to it, and the ability to be able to listen to that, be open to it, create a space for it even, and then be able to say, all right, now that it's there, I'm ready to decide to take some action on it. I think that's very powerful, and definitely something that we could speak for a long time about.